Hey, Anna. I'll be participating later, but I just wanted to get the session started.
Sure. Hi, Sam. How you doing, Jazz? Hi.
I've got a very little one in my lap, so we're expecting some visitors. I'm child babysitting and she just wants to sleep. Tiny, tiny little thing. I can't sleep.
A bit low. We can't see her. Oh, there she is.
Sleeping.
How are you, Gertrude? I've seen you for a long while.
Yeah.
Took a while to get her to settle.
Hi.
She's very skittish, this one. Slightest noise and she shakes. Nice to be here. Cheers. Hello, Gertrude.
Hi. Hi, hi.
What's happening with you, Gertrude?
At the moment, I'm quite busy.
Can't hear much.
Don't. You don't hear? No? Do you hear anything?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's been a mixture of this process is still going on, what I was talking about.
Oh, wow. That has
And
been going on.
it's really draining. It's really draining. And in between, I have to do something else. and I got an offer for, you know, please send an offer to do an AI process for merging 2 teams into one. And I got accepted, and I don't know, in September somehow, or mid and 20th or so. And the 8th and 14th and 15th, it's gonna be this workshop, this seminar, so a live seminar. So it's like within a month from the offer to fulfillment. And it's like, so and then we did 6 interviews with people where you plan 1 hour and then it goes 2.5 hours and things like that. So yeah, we are now, Tuesday is the first day. So I'm kind of excited, and so
does this mean you've sort of switched, you've turned around to something new because you're feeling that this other situation is not
it's
going?
in our realm of, it's an appreciative inquiry process. So
Okay.
it's my work, and it's the basis of my work, and I'm happy to do the work and not always have to deal with that. I have created a sentence, the wind moves the willow. So rooted in my values, in who am I, and at the same time being soft in the world with what's coming, but not changing my, it's not a position. I really got, it's about what are my values? What am I here for? And I'm not wavering in this, but I'm soft in the, so we can still work, but this is like a fundamental, I don't know. I even talked to several people because I thought it's important that my position, my part is also heard if we go along. And I will see how that turns out. And in between, I just take a break and do my work. So, and then I was 4 days on vacation with my family. This was so great. They gave it to us as a present for our wedding anniversary. And so we were 8 people in one house with a lot of toys, and my grandchildren, we were so like, oh, there's a little shop and a little whatever. Yeah, and we had just wonderful days. And I could, yeah, when you relax, you get how strenuous it was before. So,
Right.
and I woke up in the middle of the night and going crazy, and then sitting up and meditating for 3 hours or something like that. So it was really a very tough learning, transforming, growing time, but really, yeah. So Doug, thanks again for that conversation we had. It's softer, but it's still there. It's, yeah. and standing in the heat and in the fire and in the standing to myself, that's not so easy. It's not how I survived in my family. I duck. So I'm the third, and so it was, for survival reasons, it was really good to not show up anywhere. So if it's hard, you better go under the table or whatever. And so this is really hard.
Challenging.
And I'm exhausted. You know, just standing there is like I ran a marathon. It's really, and my tears are pretty close often. And this being Ahimsa and Gertraud at the same time, the one who knows how to use the spear. Yeah, the peaceful warrior or something like that. That's a pretty tough task.
What was ahimsa? I sort of remember you mentioning it before, but I don't remember exactly what it was. Ahimsa.
It's a Sanskrit word, and maybe Jasvina knows it better. It's something like nothing in me wants to hurt you. So this peacefulness, this yeah, it's translated with harmlessness, but that's not really what it means.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No harm to anybody. Yeah. So as
really,
as a stand, not.
yes.
Yeah.
So no defensiveness, actually, because
Also, yeah.
Yeah, it sort of links up with what I'm learning in Course in Miracles, this harmlessness and helpfulness at the same time. But it means that when you are attacked, you don't attack back. So the normal reactions that we would have are cut through. Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels to me it's the hardest thing to learn, the most difficult thing.
Yeah, and for me, actually, the hardest thing to learn is to keep standing, not to be peaceful in shying away, but to be peaceful in being there who I am and being soft in this, like Tai Chi or so. This is really the hard thing. Being peaceful and taking cover, that's easier.
That's the way you've always done it before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was busy on vacation at the biggest lake in southern Germany, and we had so wonderful time together. And you know, when you have two grandkids that say, "Oma, come here and do this," and you know, this, and you don't have time to worry for anything. So that was really good. Yeah. Yep. So that kept me from, and it will be Yeah, and also we had our, I don't know, 31st, 32nd anniversary of the wall coming down, or our national holiday that changed when that happened. And yeah, to do that in a peaceful way, it's still, no other revolution I know of happened that way. So it's like really like a miracle still. And we'll see how that works out with, it's still not completed, the merger of these two completely different social ways of looking at things. Yeah. So we celebrated that on Thursday. Yeah, that's about me at the time. How about you guys?
Having to reevaluate my values. Values are threatened or challenged. Sometimes you have to reevaluate your position in order to proceed with the rest of the bunch. In order to proceed with the team, to work with the team, and to get things done. To achieve.
Actually, I'm more interested about you.
I'm working on that, and I was standing in a position where I was attacked again for speaking out, for telling my truth. And it occurred to me that when you have a position that's good, you know it's good because it's wholesome, it's organic, and it's high-spirited for the community. It involves everyone, brings people together, and creates harmony and creativity. And you get attacked. Well, some people don't like that. They'll attack you just because they think you're doing well, unfortunately. But it's okay because I don't have to fall over. I can stand. I can remain standing my ground because I'm in a good position. It's as if you have a green warrior power that gives you that strength to stay standing in a position of a high moral ground, for example. And that's it's always been a useful thing to fall back on, to think about and to meditate on at times of difficulty. Oh, well, I'm complete.
I can relate to that, Alex. This feeling that when you feel wholesome about yourself and you feel good, and you don't feel the need to defend yourself, because it's a sort of appreciation that defense is actually an attack on the other person, whoever it is. I'm beginning to appreciate that, I think. And yeah, it's this harmlessness that Gertrude mentioned. You know, that when you feel you're in the right place and that what you're doing feels good for you, it's like intuitively knowing the truth and identifying with the truth, and feeling that you don't need to, that somehow it is its own justification, or its own strength.
Truth doesn't need defending.
Yeah. So that's a huge, I mean, for me, it's really a huge shift, because I've always seen the need to defend, you know, in this sort of particularly politically, you know, which is still going on, the negative and the positive, or the us and them. It's constantly divisive in that way, and who you identify with and which side you're on. That seems to be the whole way that our society functions. So to break that pattern and really stand for the truth, it looks very weak. And sometimes it can feel very vulnerable. But yeah, I'm trying to learn. Sorry? Did somebody get trouble? Was that you? Yeah, well, I'm trying to learn this different way of being, which doesn't need to defend itself and finds its strength really in its own wholesomeness. And I feel that that's a bit how we function as a group. That as a group, we're not putting out a whole justification of why we are like we are. We're just feeling our way along it. And you know, the Zapatistas talk about well, actually, we had it right at the beginning. It was something to do with you know, making the aeroplane as we go, or something. I can't remember. You know, it's a sort of understanding as we walk. That's how this is happening. It's not according to some pre-designed pattern. It's just emerging as it is. I'm complete. So I'll carry on for a bit, because it's actually bringing stuff up for me. It's also to do with just accepting people as they are, rather than this feeling I heard somebody say last week, a human being is one big grievance. And we carry our grievances, and the shape of our grievances is we want to shape other people differently. We want people to be different so that I don't feel upset. And the difficulty is really just in accepting people as they are, accepting everything as it is, which doesn't, you know, it can suggest just sort of being a vegetable and not not wanting to change anything, never growing. But that isn't what it is. It's that first platform, that first stage is really just appreciating the way people are, the way they are, that they have complete freedom to be who they are, just like I have freedom to be who I am. So my wanting them to be different goes against my principles, because it's actually attacking me. It's actually attacking the whole principle of, I was going to say democracy, but democracy is such a misused word, but it's to do with that, to do with people having the freedom to be themselves. And somehow also trusting that everything is here for a purpose, that everything is meant to be as it is. It's not, there's no accident really. Again, that doesn't mean, well, you just let everything be and never try to change it, but it is trusting that people, it's a bit like Jazz said last week, we're all on the same journey. Just we're at different parts of the journey, or different, it's not a journey that has, because Doug interpreted that a bit hierarchically, like, you know, if you're further along the journey, then you're a bit better off than if you're, it's not like that. It's just that we basically all want the same thing. We want to be complete. We want to be whole human beings with freedom to be ourselves. Anyway, I'll stop there.
There's something there in what you said, Anna. It's in nature, you see birds of a feather flock together. And in human societies, we've got this thing called rationality and thinking, and we've got language. So we start taking on culture and inheriting beliefs from traditions. And that makes us rub up against other beliefs, and things become friction. You get friction there. That doesn't happen in nature. So if we simplify things and get back to nature, we'll all get along much better. I mean, there's nothing wrong with birds flocking together if they've got a common interest. It's perfectly natural. What stuffs it up is people's opinion. People get involved with their great knowledge and wisdom, and that's what screws it up. over.
Yeah, that's what divides people. I think that's really important what you're saying, Alex, because then we focus on differences, different opinions. And that is just, we're focusing on the form rather than looking at the essence, where we are somehow all the same, however you conceptualize that. For me, I conceptualize that as we are all equal in the sight of God. But people who don't want to have a concept of God can have lots of different ways of saying that, using other terms. Yeah, it somehow reminds me of a blade of grass that I remember at one point sitting in the garden and thinking, I'm just like that blade of grass. I'm exactly the same. And yeah, there's something there which allows us to see our sameness without all the differences that we keep focusing on, because we somehow feel the differences are really important, and that's how we get into the conflict that Alex is talking about. Gertrude, is it you got your hand up? Or somebody's got their hand up at the bottom there?
Not that I know of. No.
Oh, it was Jazz. Jazz, you had your...
Hi, Sam.
Hi, Sam.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night.
So we got the language, and that makes us different from animals. We're able to discuss things rationally. Human beings can talk things out and find solutions to problems and fight over land, fight over resources. So it's a hard one, but I keep going back to the simplicity of doing things, keeping it simple, because the solutions are simple. The difficulties are the complexities involved in people trying to make a buck. The old quid pro quo, I'm not making enough interest from this deal, I'll go somewhere else. That sort of thing. And as a consequence, in free trade agreements and global resource trading, it causes problems, causes bottlenecks and wastage, all sorts of serious things, crops rotting on the docks because of regional conflicts. And it's a mess. It's a total global mess. It needs a heavy hand by a heavy-handed global government. Maybe the United Nations is too weak. I don't think there's one leader in the world who can manage it. It's got to be a roundtable United Nations effort, because the shit's starting to hit the fan all over the world. I'm complete.
somehow we started and the three of us talked just in a little bit, but Doug and Sam haven't talked yet. So I would like to hear something from you, whatever that might be, a formal check-in or whatever.
I've been thinking a dangerous thought lately. Dangerous because it's going to piss off a lot of people, especially here. And the thought is, it's a simple one. The simple thought is we're not doing enough. But the root of it is that as we evolve, as we grow towards quote unquote enlightenment, as we grow towards acceptance and just Zen and being with the universe and all of that, there's a tendency to accept what is. And that tendency to accept what is in this fashionable style, this fashionable enlightenment, as viewed as progressive, as viewed as neo everything. And in my view, that is going to stultify our actions. As we just heard from Alex, and as we've all heard a gazillion times each of us, we know that things are happening to the planet that will make it quite uncomfortable for us. And either we're going to adapt and be comfortable in that new environment, or we have to slow down some of these global changes that are happening. And to really do that requires a lot of thought and a lot of action. Considered action. But just sitting back and being, and I know those are fighting words, just sitting back and being is not going to get it done. I've probably said enough. I'll just leave it at that for now.
I concur. It's oddly enough, why should two separate minds, thousands of miles apart, have a similar kind of thought, not too far apart in time? Having said that, I've been on here 2 years and I've been doing what I thought was my bit. And I think that really at the deep down level, I'm losing the fight. I'm losing the impetus for the fight. And the reason behind that is because every couple of years or so, all the stuff that I've been involved in debunking comes anew again. And I gave that some thought in the last few days or so. Why is that? And I went back to the schooling days and my experience of the education system. The curriculum is rotated every couple of years. So if I have a particular curriculum this year, that won't be taught the next year, but the year after that, it will be that particular curriculum, whatever the subject is. I'm not talking about mathematics here, English, history, etc. So if the last year the set books were a particular set of set books, those won't be next year, but the year after. And that is innate. And the fact that the sayings that have been debunked keep coming and coming. I heard one here earlier, Alex just said that not long ago. Truth doesn't need defending. What the heck are we doing here? If not defending truth? So even I might be guilty of that inadvertently, but I'm very careful. Each and every comment, each and every quotation, I tend to check and double check. Did that person say it? Was it true then? Is it true now? Do we need to debunk these things? The fish with the 3-second or the 6-second memory, all these things. Science has been responsible for a lot of this junk as well. No, sorry, I apologize. Dr. Spock comes to mind. Now I read the other day, another young lady is going down the same route. There's no difference between male and females. I didn't even bother to read any further than the first couple of lines. Thank you very much. Having had 2 boys and a girl, myself, and 4 girls here, in a little one you just saw earlier, except Sam. They're different from even before they're born. There's a lot of stuff that needs defending, that needs repeating, but I'm getting tired. I'm not getting any much forward in what I want to be doing, and I'm repeating the same stuff over and over again in different languages as well. It may seem amusing at times, which it does, but you're right, Sam. It's kind of like grating cheese on a grater. Sooner or later, we run out of a lump of cheese. And my cheese is nearly run out, I think. I need some stimulus to keep going. I'm complete.
By the way, I don't mean this as an attack on anyone. I think that many of the positions that have been expressed about being different, I accept and embrace wholeheartedly. I just think that the piece of it that's missing in that expression is the concerted, considered, impactful action. And I'm also guilty of that myself. I'm trying to figure out where the leverage is that I've got. Because none of us, individually yet, have that planetary impact. So I'm not trying to reject anything here. I'm trying to make sure that it's a considered whole, that it's a considered perspective that includes getting stuff done, doing good stuff, having the right vision, sharing some of that, communicating it all the time, reinforcing it, as Jeff Sivendor is just saying. Don't let the light flicker out. Start it in others. Those are all actions. Over.
Doug?
I love you, Doug. You know that.
Sure. No, I've got there are a bunch. It's sort of like a stack of boxes going back to where Anna shared. I don't know whether I can keep them, whether I can access all of them. I'm getting older. Short-term memory isn't as good as it used to be. Well, first of all, Gertrude, there's sort of this weird irony in being unblocked, meaning, without carrying a lot of crap around, getting between you and the world, which in sort of associatively is like things should be lighter. But in fact, the energy demand of being present and accounted for without all that stuff is higher. So it's sort of like there's none of that energy that was being diverted to that other stuff being diverted there anymore. But there are all these new demands that are like the emergent part that's incoming. And when you change the approach, the beliefs, the whole machinery, that's a lot of work learning in real time. So, and I think the God versus non-God construct and the whole question of where am I what I'm a part of and who I am in it versus who am I. And the more centered in the I as a unit of one, agent of one, power and force of one, enables me to see all of you as individuals. And so I'm finding it harder and harder to project the idea that there's a larger thing that is either being constructed or enacted or is emerging as a unitary something as opposed to aggregations of me's, of individuals. And the work we've been doing for sort of generative value is really sort of, my experience of it is sort of like taking the old paradigm two-dimensional approach that people have in relating to each other and turning it, going from like two-dimensional chess to three-dimensional chess. What happens within the confines of the Zoom screen and each of you as squares on it to me is us each one of us having more and more resolution, understanding, awareness of the others in terms of just who they are as people and how they think and what their centers of energy around where they think, what they think about, and how they focus and communicate shows up. And in that basket, each person comes bearing their own. Each person comes unique and valid on a values basis. And from my experience, we're getting to the meat and potatoes and nitty-gritty of that. In a really clear, at least my vision of it is just that it's really clear and clean. And everybody has the room and the opportunity to describe and to add and to throw stuff into the pot. I don't feel like I'm being very articulate or focused or clear here. So I'm going to quit while I'm ahead and call it complete.
I was just quoting Bentinho Massaro. He is a teacher, and he said, accept everything, tolerate nothing. And that is something that I really So it's, for me, or in that realm, accepting means to take the world as it is and not as you want it to be. So the grievance part that Anna mentioned, really have a close look and in our definition of appreciation, we said appreciation starts with a clear look on what is. So I think if you're not there and if you don't see what actually is, then change is, I don't know, a lot of actions somewhere. But, and this tolerate nothing is, I think I said, so I love you and you're behaving like an asshole. So this seeing what is and taking action if necessary. Or from that being of acceptance, but not tolerating stuff that doesn't work. And I think that is what I started with, to stay in that realm of, that is not our values, that is not what I'm here, not in my name, things like that. And that takes, this being is not this, I'm sitting there and singing on. It's more a presence from which I'm taking action. And I'm not here in this realm at the moment pretty often. And when Sam, when you were talking, I just had an offer to put two teams together in the, what do you call it, Umweltamt, so the governmental agency for environment. Or in November, we had to postpone that November because we didn't have enough participants, but we will do that in next year. But it's about climate, and the workshop we are doing is with people that do consultancy with low income families. And so I'm maybe it's who we are in the world and not so much the concerted effort in here that makes the difference. And since we're not doing so much together, it might be not so visible. But for me, it's like, I'm doing the work. I'm in the field and trying to my best abilities to, and it was not very easy to do that lately. But even that is something that I say, I don't want to go back in my development. I don't want to go back to, when we talk about Ken Wilber, to purple leadership things, the know all father. So I hear what you say, and I take it seriously. And maybe it's not so obvious, and still might be that we don't do enough, that we can turn the tide. And I'm seeing it all over, where people start to think again in another way. And coming back to Anna's grievances, today I read an article about some, we just had our anniversary of the coming down the wall, and there was about why did the AfD, the alternative for Germany, why did they get so much ground on the eastern side? And they said that the old Eastern Germany, that was forced by the Soviets, and then the wall and the Stasi and all this, and people started to adapt to it and say, okay, we cannot change anything, so we withdraw into the private and have our dacha and all this. But they had that grievance mindset. So they couldn't do anything about it, and so they had all kinds of private jokes about and this was the only way to deal with it, to be in grievance. And now he said, so he was raised there and did everything there, and his parents were in the party and all this. But he said, so the way it is not compared to what the grievance. So the grievance is like this, and the actual fact they are so mad about is actually here. But this is all this old mindset that still feeds into that, and that the ultra left and the ultra right, they all feed into this old way of being. I can't do anything, and I'm the victim, and I have to grieve about. So, and this is not accepting what is, and not even looking really what is, but to feed that old mindset. So I thought this was a very good explanation to not really being where now is, but being in my own. And that this was like forced for 40 years, but it's still existing though the wall came down. And so it has a lot of traction, this party. Yeah. So I love accept everything, tolerate nothing. I really like that, because being here and then having a real true look on what is, and then act from there.
So, Gertrude, you
My
mentioned.
husband,
Sorry.
may I just add another sentence? My husband, what you were talking about, like being in the meditative state and only being in the and all this. My husband called it illuminatio precox. So I think I'm enlightened because I act like that. That's not.
It's a form of hubris.
Pardon?
It's a form of hubris. It's an arrogance.
Yeah. So now, Sam, sorry.
Well, you mentioned quite often in your offering what is, seeing what is, being here. Doug mentioned clarity. And then Alex was also talking about, the state of the world. I think much of that still comes down to resting on the fundamental notion of truth. And this notion of truth has been getting devalued in some sense in too many conversations. The value of the self allows us to say, well, I have my own truth. And I really want to say bullshit to that. I really want to say, no, you can't have your own truth. You can believe what you want as long as you're curious enough to know whether or not that, correlates to the real world. And you take a responsible position to really understanding your own beliefs. But you don't get to just have opinions and say that's true for me. So when we say what is, there's got to be a position we take in order to determine what is. Obviously I have my own senses. I rely on them. I also rely on other sources, other people. I rely on other reporting. Unfortunately, other reporting lately has been questionable and put into doubt. But it's the correlation and analysis of all of these sources that give us, a more considered opinion of what actually truly can be is. Okay. And of course, it's not absolute. Okay. As long as you're open to new information, that new information could alter what is. But that does not change what that consideration is revealing to you. And I think this almost irresponsible worship of the I. I'm not saying it's entirely wrong, but I'm saying it's an unbalanced worship of the I. Gives us this right to think that I know the truth. I know the truth for me. That is a horribly irresponsible position. And we need to evolve beyond that. Over.
And oh, you muted yourself by accident, Anna.
Thank you. Yes, Sam, I agree with a lot of what you said just now. The idea that we each have our own truth. I wouldn't use truth, and I spoke to Glenn about this on the last session that we had. I wouldn't use truth for the sorts of things that are reported in newspapers. Whether they are really true, in inverted commas, or not, I would call that accuracy. I think truth is about something a lot deeper, and it's to do with eternal truth. Truth does not change. So to say that we can each have our opinion about truth, I agree that that doesn't make sense. That is what divides us. But I want to come back to what you said right at the beginning, which was you felt you were going to present something dangerous, which was to do with the fact that we're not acting in the world. I guess what you meant, that we're not acting in the world to stem the dangers that are happening, all the things that Alex was talking about, the destruction of our life base, you could say. And what's important for me about that is that, and I respect that, and I feel that that's something we share. But what I feel that you were coming from was a place of fear about that, because we're not doing enough. It's going to overtake us. If we don't do something about it, we're going to get swallowed up by this thing that's happening. And, all of that is true. Jazz, again, sharing your concern. and feeling that we're just repeating the same things over and over. He's losing the impetus to keep on fighting. So my feeling here is there is only one solution, only one resolution, which is to come from a place of love as opposed to fear. And that's what I'm putting my energy into learning, how to come from a place of love, even when I appear to be threatened by things out there. What I'm trying to learn is that it's the way that I see it and interpret it, which decides whether it's threatening or not. That if I come from a place of love, this defenselessness that Alex talked about, which Jaswinder poo-pooed, for me, that is the strongest place to come from, the place of love. I think, Sam, you also know that somewhere, because you've sort of spoken about it. Okay, you want to come back?
My question to you, Anna, is how do you know I come from fear? Because that's not the way I see myself. Obviously, this is, my own opinion. But I come from a love of where I live, my immediate neighborhood, as well as the greater neighborhood, the community, the region, the planet. I come from loving that. And that love can result in some anger. I think that's entirely appropriate.
Anger is always a response of fear. Always.
No, it's not. I will disagree with that. I think that love of something and seeing that that something is not thriving, not sustaining, can compel one strongly in emotion.
Yeah.
You don't have to call it fear.
Totally. I really understand that.
It comes from that very strong love of that thing that you want to have thrive, that you want to have be very resilient. And that love can be very strong. So what you label fear, I would advise you to look perhaps differently. It's not that simple. I know the Marianne Williamson teachings. I'm trying to embrace them. I don't know them as well as you do, but I'm trying to embrace them as well. This is a strong love of the planet, of the family, for the next N generations, of the neighborhood, of the species, other species. It comes from that place. So where is the fear in holding those positions? To see that there is trend. Trend is easy to see.
Because you feel it's threatened. When you feel something is threatened, then you react with fear. I understand that. It's not, to come from fear is not a blame. I understand. And actually, we all share your love of this planet and wanting to protect the things that you love. Absolutely. We're all in that. I feel we're all in that same position. I feel we all understand that.
Fear implies a pattern-based weakness that is inappropriate. That, at least that's what it implies to me. Now, if you actually see that there's a responsible, okay, sorry, a considered response that could be taken that's, you know, quite well formed, that is proven to be viable, is that really fear? Or is that just acting? Is that just taking action? Why do you have to label it fear?
Well, that's a good question. It is a good question. Why is it important to see that it's coming from fear rather than love? Alex, did you want to say
Or
something?
not to see it coming from love?
It's got to come from somewhere. I think we're even in a position of fear or we're in a position of love.
It's in your narrative. Why not just understand the action? Why do you have to put your own narrative on things?
Well, we're sort of talking about apples and oranges.
Many.
So the fear-love duality is about feelings. It's about the emotional component of things. And then there's all the idea stuff, all that intellectual stuff. And they're two completely different centers and facets and dimensions of human existence.
They're connected.
And they're part of the soup. Now, sometimes they're connected for some people, and sometimes they're disconnected for some people. And then there are some people whose connection array is off the standard scale, and they're connected, but in their own unique ways. And the fear anger nexus, because what you raised was anger, and you questioned anger being rooted in fear. And anger actually isn't a primary emotional feeling or response, it's a derivative. It rides on the back of fear, because anger takes the fear and enables us to get bigger, louder, more visible, more threatening to whatever the threat is. So anger is sort of a response dimension, but the underlying trigger and the heart of the furnace on an emotional level is fear.
Why is that useful to say?
Why is it useful to add that layer of...
No, why is it useful to describe it that way? Like, for example, I go back to what Lincoln said. He said anger was quite appropriate. You take the measure of a person, by what that person gets angry at. So I can get angry at somebody, stinging me out in the garden. I could get angry about stuff like that. I could get angry about being told to go do my homework. Or I could get angry about stuff that I see, happening to the planet. And Lincoln will judge people. Now, obviously, that's a judgment action. But he will actually then take the perspective of someone based on what that person gets angry about. I'm sure that's not the only factor, but he will use that. So anger to me doesn't always have to be rooted in this fear story. I don't really understand that. When you see something and you need to take action and you need to take it aggressively and decidedly, and you want to make sure that this actually gets done and do it with some kind of energy, okay, maybe you can avoid the word anger, but anger actually does fit in some of those situations. And I don't see the fear there. I see concern. I see love. I can see understanding. But why do you always have to tell the fear story there?
The fear is based on separation. Sam. And it's that separation into them and us, which is the basis of fear, these differences that Alex was talking about. So love is the opposite of that, in that it unites people. It brings them together into oneness, where they see how they are alike each other and they identify with each other, and that produces harmony. So the separation is what is happening in this world, with wars and conflict and opinions and scarcity and fear. That's all part of the same bundle. If you were to, it's a choice between that bundle, which is based on this scarcity mode and hierarchy and the industrial military complex and all of that we've talked about. And the choice between that and whether you relate to people as my family, my brothers and sisters. These people are part of me. What I do to them, I do to myself because of love, because I was created in love and I am. That is my choice, that love is the only way to repair, to save this planet from total destruction.
Disagreement between what you said and what I said, actually.
Sorry?
I don't see any disagreement between what you were describing versus what I was describing.
Well, I was pointing out why fear and love are important. It's a binary, but it's an important dichotomy, because if you can see that this culture, this society that we've created here is based on fear, it's fear and attack are all part of the same bundle. And it's really important to see how insidious attack is, because it, you know, there was something that you said, I can't remember exactly, but you said, well, I don't think I'm attacking when I say that. Everything that is not love is attack.
It was coming from love, Anna.
No, I'm not saying that you don't have love, Sam, that there is a lot of love there, but that statement that you talked about, the dangers.
Still coming from love, Anna.
Well, I would disagree with you. I think what
because
you're
you have to
talking
tell
about,
a story around love and fear, Anna.
because what?
Because you have to tell a story that is a dualist story around love and fear. For some reason, you feel you have to tell that story.
Yeah, it feels, it rings true.
Need. I don't feel the need.
That's okay. You don't feel the need. You don't see that those two things are a choice that human beings have. Jazz, what did you want to say?
There are many, many, many choices.
Well, I'd like to make this point. I do agree wholeheartedly, love and fear are part and parcel of each other. All attributes are paired. We sometimes forget that. Sam has said many times, he's not coming from fear. He's coming from love. So am I. And I would go so far as to say that for the very first time in the history of mankind, we have a genuine opportunity to move from fear to love, from capitalism to socialism. They're paired as well. And if we do not put up a damn good fight, that zig that's coming into a zag might go back into being a zig. since the end of World War II, we've had a fair amount of socialism. Going back to about 1939 with the Great Depression, we moved into socialism. And that socialism was upset by Reaganism and Thatcherism. We are now trying to move back into socialism, and everybody's saying it is poison. I'm not afraid of that.
Not everyone.
Neither do I love that statement. And furthermore, I put in there, you know, I've asked this question before, and I will ask again and again, which is higher, love or truth? When we make a statement, we have this subjective, which is based on feelings, and objective, which may come from feelings, but it tends to reduce the feelings and take something, a kernel, to do the same thing about the situation, which is acceptable with the minimum degree of destruction or distress. So that's kind of a logical approach. When we start this fear and love, and first of all, we haven't even defined what the parameters are. Umpteen kinds of love, umpteen kinds of fear, and we're trying to balance that. But the balance is somewhere else. I can be afraid of a lot of things. Children are afraid of a lot of things. But I need to control that fear to get to a logical situation, a logical method of doing that, whatever that needs doing. And presently, we want to move to a place where we are good for the majority and not the minority who are trying to keep us in fear. That is my kind of kernel. And I'm not coming from fear. I'm complete.
Let me just ride a little bit on that one. Gertrude talked about being in the moment or accepting what is. If one truly does that, one actually is devoid of emotion. You don't have to get all worked up if you truly accept what is. And yet, when one does that, one is viewed as inhumane. Oh, you don't feel love? Oh, you don't feel fear? If you really do accept what's taking place completely, absolutely, comprehensively, and understand the cycles of nature and understand everything has its moment, I might actually not be sad that my dog is dying, even though as a human, people would expect me to be so. So all of this emotion stuff is a story we want to tell ourselves that contradicts accepting what is. Over for now.
For me, the love that I'm talking about is unconditional love. And it's not the love that we talk about in human terms, which comes and goes. It is eternal. So to compare it to say, you know, I love ice cream or I love chocolate bars or whatever, the way that we use love, that's just our sloppy way of talking about our emotions. I don't think that has anything to do with what we're talking about here.
And yet it does, because it's the same word. And if you use it, people will have those implications and notions. So unless we actually take the time to really talk about these, I mean, Jazz Winter calls them the parameters of what we're talking about, then those misconceptions will still propagate. As far as an absolute love, I still don't actually know what that is, unless what that really means is I accept the universe in its totality. If that's what absolute love is, I'm there. But anything short of that, I don't understand, actually. Or anything greater than that, I don't understand.
I agree. I think it's way beyond our understanding to actually understand what unconditional love is.
So
So
what do you
we're
need to
also,
say that I am then if we don't understand what that statement means? Why say it?
because we have created a world here which completely excludes those things that we don't understand, like eternity and infinity. Now, Doug and I disagree about this, but I'm going to give my version, which is I feel that those parameters, that it's really important to understand how they influence who we are here. It's because we have separated ourselves off from that whole eternal and infinite dimension that we think that we can explain and resolve our existence here in its own terms. For me, that is an impossibility, and it's totally insane because that isn't who we are. So yes, I agree with you. Those things are beyond our understanding.
I tend to disagree with that. Violently so. Greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for another is a definition set up and demonstrated time and again, multiple times by multiple religions.
And wars. Look at the people that lay down their lives.
1 second, 1 second. If you want me to move on to war and what war has given us, there is a balance to be struck. You can't just make a sweeping statement and say war. There are 3 things at least that I can give you that World War II has given us. And one of them we're using right now. Sorry, 2 of them. One is schooling. We wouldn't have had that. 2 is the technology. People died to produce this technology on time so that they could win a battle or something called freedom, an abstract notion that I have freedom and I'm going to destroy you to keep my freedom, but I'm not going to allow somebody else the same freedom. We are talking about abstract notions without qualification. And if somebody qualifies that notion, why aren't we accepting it? And have a deep look at it. I'm not speaking just because I've heard of it or read of it. I have seen it in action. The sacrifice principle is and has been used time and time again to achieve an end amicably, where only one person or 2 or 3 or a small number have laid down their lives for the greater good. Not the other way around, millions and billions going to war and nothing is resolved. We still have something good coming out of it. So I'm all for debate. I'm all for debate honestly and without the fanfare, without this trying to split things that we really don't understand. And we're too frightened to say, well, I don't understand that. Can somebody explain it to me? Or that what we keep saying is, well, that's not for me and everybody else must be the same as well. No. The same. I'm not an individual either. I'm part and parcel, a product of the times, and I don't really like them. That's why I'm here. I think we can make them better with a little effort. And I'm mighty grateful. I feel recharged. Complete.
Your energy is different now than it was an hour ago. Just from there. But let me also say something on the back of what Yasunder just said. You know, I think it's quite stylish these days to say war is bad, war is evil. In absolute terms, it's not. A warrior, by one definition in Budo terms, is one who fights for those who can't, usually against injustice. And there is much injustice. One definition of pacifism I ran across, even when in high school, was a pacifist is not someone who fights. It's one who chooses not to fight. That doesn't mean that they cannot do so. And they can, at times, choose to defend what is good against injustice. Now, I'm not talking about major world wars. There's much injustice there from the incipients of war. I'm talking about, you know, protecting neighborhood plots of land from being bulldozed into skyscrapers. I'm talking about, you know, protecting animals from being slaughtered. I'm talking about other kinds of fights. So, physical defense leading to escalation, protecting against injustice. If you want to call that war, you can, but I don't view that as all bad. So I think using one simple three-letter word war and saying it's always evil, we should always avoid it, is again a non-discerning position to be taking. Just like in nature, you know, ravaged lands, you know, happen from time to time. Things get swept up by fires, by floods, whatever, you know, and change happens. So these huge dynamic changes are a part of natural history. And yes, historically, it's been because might makes right, and we want what we want, and we don't care who else suffers from it. Hopefully, that's what we're trying to change. But protecting what is good, and sometimes physically protecting what is good, I don't view as evil, always. Over. I would say the biggest fight, the most difficult fight I'm in right now is protecting the truth. And it's not my own fight. I'm in it with a million, a zillion other people. But I think that's the fight right now that makes most sense. And that, I think, has to take place from a deeper understanding of what is true, what is truth. And that's why I really want to attack, quote unquote, this notion that I have my own truth. That's one that will definitely keep us in confusion. Over.
Say what you mean by protecting, with millions of people protecting the truth.
I think science is under attack. The ignoramuses in charge of power disrespect science. They want people to be uneducated. They want to be able to basically increase the volume of propaganda and make people believe what they want to have believed without question. So policies like trickle-down economics, God, you know, they were so successful with that. Policies like, well, you know, science is not the arbiter. Science is just another religion. That's another piece of bullshit. You know, I really, really want to get people clear away from just accepting what is being told them. Now, if people were really critical thinkers and were able to say, well, let me look at the evidence, let me look at this source, let me look at that source, let me put the entire aggregate perspective together, let me make my own judgments that way and be responsible, that I strongly support. And that, if you take that position, you're completely free to disagree with me and show me why, because then I will learn. But just to be thumping on a book, you know, that's written thousands of years ago and, you know, collected, you know, and some pages thrown out, you know, 600 years ago, and call that the truth, that's the most irresponsible position I think you could be taking. So we need this perspective. And if we accept this perspective, we need tools that let us do this. Newspapers used to be that. They used to be trusted, no more. Now we need a much more complex system of tracking epistemology, provenance, accountability, evidence, rationale, theories, models, predictions. We need much more than that. And in fact, that is what Doug Engelbart was trying to create with his dynamic knowledge repository. And that is why that still is fundamental to what I'm trying to do. That enables much, much, much else. But that is one way we protect the truth. Over.
I think the fundamental thing about that is about facts, and maybe the...
No, it is not simply about facts. Facts are one layer of that, but it is not simply about that.
Trying to pin down
Well,
the
when it
fundamental.
comes to alternative facts, so what you see and hear is not what's happening, then we're really in trouble. Like,
Yeah,
so
obviously, you know, facts have to be addressed. Like if somebody says, hey, you know, Trump drew the biggest crowds ever in all of politics, and we take pictures, that's one way to deal with it. If somebody says everything's all fine, and then somebody else shows up with pictures of the Amazon burning, you know, we have to think something else. We have to look at our sources. We have to look at who are the messengers who are trying to get us to believe certain messages and understand their motivation. And oh, by the way, where the money flows and the power flows. Maybe even where the blood.
Alex would like to talk. Sorry to break.
There's a notion that if you remove everything that's obviously incorrect, impossible, wrong, and driven by nationalistic greed, what remains might be closer to the truth, factual. When you look at the world's finest scientific minds coming to conclusions about our future because of the emissions of CO2, some of their predictions are close to being accurate, but underestimated. And we've seen that happen over the last couple of decades a few times with the IPCC. So when we see vested interests trying to hose down the reports and the warnings, we can pretty much guess that they are driven by vested interests. They're driven by the fear of the loss of value for material possession. They're not thinking spiritually about globalization, because the only way we're going to get over this hump is by a global push, a global effort, a World Trade Organization that has teeth, not a toothless tiger. So I think truth is closer to what you find when you remove what's impossible. There's a lot of things that are just ridiculously impossible. They're fantasies driven by right-wing extremists and fundamentalism over complete.
I'd like to jump in with something. which is I'll take all your facts and knowledge and truths and trump them with beliefs. Because beliefs are things created by human beings in the face of incoming. And each person is their own belief generator. And there are an infinite number and variety of ways that people construct their beliefs. And sometimes those beliefs are insane. And whether they're sane or insane, whether they're true or not, factual or not, at the end of the day, they're what that person believes, and that is exactly what will dictate what they do. Because individual beliefs are source for every individual on the planet. And there is no projectable we, and we have no influence or control, and I have no influence and control over what somebody else believes. I don't have power, authority, nor ability to affect what somebody else believes. So the question for me is not about that, because that's what is. The question is it possible for me and somebody with a different belief to not kill each other? Like, as a starting premise, that we not do damage or harm to each other, nor at the expense of the other. Like, just as a starting place, just as a, for shits and giggles, you know, like, what if? We could start with that.
There is a lot in what you say, and I'm just going to add to it, not by detracting anything. A bunch of thieves will have their own beliefs and their own morality. And a bunch of people who are totally honest will have a set of morality beliefs as well. And the difference between the two will hinge on one item and one item alone. The one is very selfish, and the other one is not. So when we talk about beliefs, there is a lot of similarity between all belief systems, and yet there is something in all belief systems that lean one way or the other.
Hold on, I'm not talking about belief systems, Jazz. I'm talking about, what do you, Jaswinder Singh, now do you pronounce it with a hard ch or with a soft ch? I don't know how your last name is pronounced.
Chagger.
Chagger. Okay, so what does Jaswinder Singh Chagger believe? Because that's what determines what you're going to say, do, react, who you are, and what you're going to bring in the world.
So I'm not looking to change all morality beliefs, because I understand that it's only the one belief that what their intention is that matters, and to change just that one. Because the rest are already good, they're in place. They're doing it for themselves, they can do it for others. That was the premise I came in with a long time ago.
Oh, that's interesting. Wait, so I just want to make sure I got that right, because that is interesting. So your first sort of belief shift is from sort of scarcity, fear, greed place to a place of abundance and flow and generosity. Okay. I think I might actually agree with you. Yeah, Anna and I have had a lot of conversations about, you know, I really just wonder whether as a species we're evolutionarily far enough along to be able to transcend self-interest, like something bigger than me as an idea. But yeah, I'm right there.
It's a responsibility and a privilege.
I'm just thinking about something I learned in another context. We were talking about the vicious cycle, and the vicious cycle was what made people like fight and things like that. And it's going round and round. And the one part is, so to stop that and cut that through, to see what are the facts, what actually happened. And then what did you make it mean? How was your interpretation? And mostly people don't think about this distinction. They just, something's happening and then they make it mean something. And when they next time they come to people and then they have their interpretation with them, like, oh, he doesn't like me, or whatever that might mean. And then you come here and you infuse your interpretation in the new situation. And the other one is like, oh, why she's so funny with, why does she react that way? And so, oh, she doesn't like me. And so you have the next round of interpretations, and that's the vicious cycle, what they were talking about. And so the remedy is to see what are the facts and what did I make them mean. And if I could take those things apart, I had actually a possibility to end war in a small or bigger way. Yeah, so that is what came up when I listened
Even
to
just
them.
resolving the facts sometimes is difficult if you don't have a record of what happened, right?
Sure, but I mean, mostly you can say he said this and then he did this. And it's, at the beginning, it's very hard because our opinion, our interpretation is so intertwined with the facts that it's very hard to get them apart. But if you're used to that, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
And we had a very big example here. If I can share that. So my daughters had an exchange student from Chile, and they were sending emails back and forth, and she was so happy to be here. And at home she was very protected and all this, so she was happy to come here. And then she came a day earlier, and I had to work all day, and my husband as well, so we didn't pick her up, or I had to pick her up and put her in her room. So for maybe an hour or so she was alone, because my daughter had to come home from school, and so whatever. And the very next day she didn't show up. She didn't come home from school. And where is that girl? I mean, you're responsible. And then we realized she was so upset with us that she went to the friend that she already knew, because she was an exchange student last year, and went home with her and told her mother, and she was crying all the time. And she told them that we did something wrong. And then they called the parents, and the parents said she must not go back to us. And they did it all without us, never asking what happened. And then the very next day, my daughter said, I don't want to go to school because they think we are mean and we did something to her. And then my husband just came home and said, wait a minute. What really happened is that she had to be alone for 1 hour in her new room because my daughter had to do some homework. It was necessary. So she was next door, but so we didn't leave her alone in the apartment. Okay. And then nothing. I mean, that was our crime. And then she had her parents said, we don't give money to the school anymore if they put her in our house again. So they took all the policies. You have to be for 2 or 3 days, you have to be in that family, and then we can decide. And so it happened that she went to another family, and my daughters went in there and just hello, and they were nice to her. And then I called the mother of that other girl and said, why didn't you talk to me? Yeah, she was so hysterical. I said, yeah, but you don't have to be hysterical yourself. And so we invited them to have that conclusion and give her suitcase and all this. And then, why did you say that? It was a lie what you told your parents. And so she apologized and said, yeah, we were, and she apologized to her parents, and the parents apologized to us. And so it was really like, but it could have exploded around the globe for 1 hour that we left her in her room. And this was like, oh my God. And they all went hysterical. So there were 2 girls and 1 mother crying, and I don't know what, and said, without talking any word to us. And the family threatening the school and all this. So that's the cycle.
Ironically, all of them felt that they were defending the defenseless, right?
Yep.
Hey, almost as part of my checkout, I shared something yesterday, which was a reformulated outline. There was a structured way of presenting why I think I'm in the GCC. What am I doing in the GCC? I shared that in the barn raising yesterday. So I just am sharing that link. I know there's not much time to go through it, but I just wanted it here because every once in a while, I try and take another stab at describing what's going on in GCC. Not that I ever understand it, but I always have a new flavor of it. So I just wanted to share that with you here. And thanks for letting me be pokey today. I know I'm a bit more pokey today than sometimes.
Is that because of, do you think that because you're upset about your dog?
I don't think so. I think I'm just getting more clear with many, many repetitions through this question. What are we doing in GCC? We hit the 2-year cycle. Every time somebody new comes, they're asking, okay, so what's happening here? Are we really a collaboration? I floated the idea, by the way, a few weeks ago that GCC to me now means Global Challenges Conversations, not Global Challenges Collaboration. Hopefully collaboration can happen, and it's probably happening, like Lucy and Tammy and others. But it's not a GCC collaboration, it's a Lucy-Tammy collaboration that stemmed out of GCC. So to me, I'm now describing GCC as Global Challenges Conversations, just FYI.
Can I ask you as a supplement, how is the dog?
Zeus is probably in his last week. Now when he feeds, there's a lot of blood left in his bowl. The whole left side of his face has tumors and is bleeding, and he's constantly licking it. My other dogs, Hera and Tia, are so caring that they're always trying to lick his face to make him feel better. He's still bouncy. You know, when I get into the room, he still wags his tail. He still wants to come near me. He still leans on me. He still wants to, you know, go places with me. He still wants to be within 3 feet of me. But we knew at some point it's going to be a little too difficult for him. So unfortunately, I leave Sunday for Chicago for 5 days, and I have an appointment on Saturday, the 12th, with the vet, and that might be a critical decision point for me. So I think he's in his last week, but I think the medication that I did get him has helped somewhat. There was some antibiotics, there was some pain medicine, and then there was something else, I forget. But anyway, 3 separate kinds of medications, and it's tough because obviously he's been at my side pretty much literally the entire 8.5 years, and he's too young to be suffering this. You know, he's only 8.5. So it does make me look at the time I have left available and say it's not that many. Maybe only what, 5,000 days, 10,000 days, who knows? 100 days could be. But thank you for asking, Anna. I mean, he's been a special dog for me. He's the first dog I've actually had from. Actually, no, second dog I've had from birth. Actually, no, the first one was actually only at 8 weeks. Anyway, yeah. So he's been kind of special for me. Would anyone here like a golden retriever? I understand they actually were started right around your neck of the woods, Anna. Somewhere in the UK, that's where the breed started.
Wow.
I grew up with a dog that was like Dennis the Menace's sheepdog. It was a crossbred. It never grew as big as a proper sheepdog like Dennis the Menace's, but it was 1 year old when I was 1 year old when my father brought the dog home, and it was destroyed when I was 15. So I grew up with it. Companion.
Yeah, that's special too.
Mm.
And I'll log out with this closing statement, a closing thought about meeting people at a conference or a seminar and going through the crowd with your device, exchanging contact electronic business cards. If you see a person's keyword list, you instantly can tell whether you'll be able to connect with that person because they're on the same wavelength. So it's really a quick and easy thing to do, but it impersonalizes it. It takes out the process of meet and greet, you know. So that's a bummer. But the keyword list is critical, and every member who joins should have one that others can look at, I believe. Over.
May I correct something I said to you, Anna? I think you were right. I think Zeus's condition did make me consider the finiteness of my days. And that gives me a sense of urgency. And that gives me a more compelling energy to say what's on my mind and to say what's true for me. So thanks for pointing that out.
Is
So anybody else with a closing share before we call it a day?
Oh, I don't particularly want to end on a very sad note. I had a cat, 2 dogs, and my mother all die in my presence, and my father to a large extent. The first 2 were very painful. The second 2, well, that was kind of like they've achieved relief. They've gone. They're no longer suffering. The dog I had to have put down because it had cancer. The cat was hit by a car. There was nothing I could do. It died. in my hands. But we carry on, we put on a brave face, false or otherwise, and complete.
I just want to say I feel that we've tackled some quite difficult topics today, and we seem to have come through without too much antagonism.
No blood on the ground.
No blood, yeah.
I have a call coming in, so thanks a lot, and I hope I can be there next week. But it's tough Thursdays, so not to get
It was
into
great
a
to see you.
cycle. And you could think of me on Tuesday, so it's the whole day. So I take any time. I take good vibes for the opening day for this Appreciative Inquiry Summit. And this is yeah, to support them in doing their great work for the environment. Yep. Bye-bye. Great to see you again. Bye.
If my parents force me to do my homework, I'm going to tell the parents.
What was the last half of that line, Alex? It broke off for me.
If they force me to do my homework, I'll tell the neighbours, my friends' parents. I'll tell them all that my parents are terrible.
Well, Sam, I'd be honored and delighted to engage and have some conversation with you on this idea of why love and fear stir into the mix. If you would be interested in doing that.
We could do it as a one-on-one, or you could come to Saturday, or we could do it next Sunday. Either way.
Either or. Any one of the three works.
Come
say again?
Come next Saturday.
I'll do a check and I'll ping you. Absolutely. If that doesn't work, we'll do one of the others.
Okay. By the way, just one last note. I thought that Jaswinder did say something like we're at the cusp of this opportunity to really switch in our shift of thinking. I wonder, though, because villages and other nations throughout history, at least to my knowledge, have been less worshipful of the I and of capitalism and more towards good for the community. So I'm wondering whether or not this really is unique or whether it's just the next opportunity, the one that we ourselves have to face.
I think just as a closing, response to that, I really believe this is unique because we managed to innovate and evolve ourselves to enabling means and technology for every man, woman, and child on the planet virtually to connect, be online, be informed, get up to speed, give their voice, all of that. And the innate affordance of that on a global basis is unprecedented. And I think of an evolutionary step quality in terms of moment in history because of that. And I have no idea beyond that what's to emerge out of it, whether it's destruction and another, the world resets and starts all over again, or we actually live to fight another day and do something. So, but I do believe this moment is the moment, and it's getting shorter every day. Yeah. Okay, everybody, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye. Bye.
battery. Mm.
Anna? Anna? Well, we better go, eh? I can't see her. She switched her video off.
Hello. No, I'm
You're
here.
the- Somebody's made you the host, Anna. Who made you the host?
Does that mean I have to turn it off?
No, you can
That
stay
was
on
Sam
for
did that.
it. Can you hear me?
See, I don't know how to do anything on here at
There's a
all.
little cross in the top right-hand corner that you just click or
No,
press
it's
on.
different on mine because I'm on a recording.
Okay,
Disconnect. Okay, I'm going to turn it off now.
Okay. Bye. Bye. She turned it off. Look here. There's a leave meeting button in the bottom right of the black. Leave meeting. Can you see the leave meeting button in red?